Hey, Brian, it looks like we can set up like an intro video or something like that instead of coming in with these cold openings. So maybe we should try that.
Well, we could. I mean, what? We were like 1 second too late today. So we are an on time program, that's for sure. Unscripted, but on time.
We're going to have a conversation on some NFL, look back at week 6, look forward to look ahead to week 7. Uh, Ron's got some questions he needs answered or wants answered. And we'll come up with a handful of other topics to send us on wild tangents, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Where do you
We'll
want to start
try.
this week?
I thought last week was a great learning experience for me. I was very, very light on volume. It was technically a one win, two loss, one tie week for me, not counting the Philadelphia look ahead line in August -3. But games of the year go in separate categories. It certainly contributed to the bottom line. But I learned a lot watching the football, and I think teams started to separate for me a little bit. So just because I didn't have a lot of volume does not mean I didn't get a lot out of this week. If you look back, let's see, 3-5, 4-7 for me the last 2 weeks. Nothing to write home about. 28-19, I think it is overall for the season. But I feel good going in. How was your week?
Oh, I got ridiculed publicly for giving out Seattle. And, it's hard to be patient with some people. It's just like, they're the home team. They lost the turnover battle like 3-0. They were in a position to take the lead past the midway point of the fourth quarter. What the hell's wrong with that pick? I'd make that pick 100 times out of 100 times. My metrics say that Seattle deserved to be covering that spread. And these one result trolls just are hilarious. It's just, and it was the same thing with, I didn't bring my last week's sheet. Darn it. It was the same thing with another game, the Denver game. It's like, the Saints game. How am I supposed to know a lobby is going to go out in the early first quarter? That makes a lot of difference. And, big play after big play. It's a lot of stuff that you can't handicap in some of these games. You've got to, basically go off of metrics and history and situations. And there's a hell of a lot of moving parts in deciding who you're going to play, other than what your eyes see and what the result is. It's really easy to Monday morning quarterback losses. So it just gets a chuckle out of me, frankly, because I don't regret either one of those games in the least. I would play them every time.
Block out the noise is what I would say there. Your number one job, and I don't sell picks or anything, but my number one job is the same as your number one job, is to do our handicapping and figure that out. And the other stuff is interesting, sometimes comical, sometimes distracting. The less distracting it is for you, the better, because it's distracting for me when I miss a game and I'm not even out there sharing it with somebody, or if I'm sharing some pregame thoughts and people know who I like. And I had Seattle. That was one of my 2 losers. It was a circumstance where I thought they could take advantage of San Francisco's shortcomings on a short week. The problem with Seattle, and I think I mentioned that a little bit on Thursday with you guys and a little bit online, is that Geno Smith's alarm clock doesn't tend to go off in the first quarter or second quarter. I just hate the fact that Seattle seems to be playing from behind a little too much for my taste. Still, I thought getting the 3.5 was a good play. Seattle has a pretty good history in the series, so there's nothing to be looking back and saying that wasn't a good play.
Well, and a lot of that wager is not the bet on Seattle. it's the bet against San Francisco. And
Right.
and I don't know too many people that would want to have bet San Francisco if they had known that they would have played that game that way. I mean, they gave up points in droves, and they didn't look very good. They looked beatable, and they were beatable. Seattle kind of shot themselves in the foot at the end. So I guess enough on that game. It's just there's a lot of moving parts in handicapping the game, and I just worry about what I'm going to bet. But it's a good opportunity to comment about when you reevaluate whether your losses. Would I make that play again, and what went wrong? And and that's why I bring it up. Nothing else.
I think this is a good time to start off and talking about betting early versus betting late, because a lot of people in the space say, oh, you should never bet on game day, or, oh, you should never bet when the lines first come out. You don't know the information, and so on. And my stance has always been there are reasons to bet early and reasons to bet late. And I think week 6 to me was an absolute perfect example of when to bet early and when to bet late, and when to bet both early and late on a game. So I want to give you 3 examples and get your opinion. I bet the Jets +3 pretty much right away when it came out, because I never, ever would have guessed the line would go beyond 3. That was the max. I mean, you have to read the market, and that was the max, we were going to get, or that I was going to get on +3. I like the way the game's set up. Buffalo, 3rd straight game on the road. You get the interim coach bump. You make Rodgers happy. There's a lot of they come off a disappointing performance, and they're going to give everything. They win this game. They're tied for first place in the division. The metrics stood up. That to me was a situation where you have to bet that game early, because you could lose the 3, and then lo and behold, we did lose the 3. If you wanted to bet the Jets later on, because running back Cook went out, wasn't playing for Buffalo, and so on and so forth. Any comments about, in general, betting games early when you see a number that you shouldn't ignore?
It's a double-edged sword. I mean, especially in today's game with the concussion protocols, and it seems like players pop up on the injury list later on in the week, sometimes out of nowhere. And players like last week, I was on the Giants, and I think pretty much everybody thought Neighbors would be a go for Monday night. And when he didn't go, that was pretty painful. And not to mention the stupid 22-yard run when they were just trying to get 2 yards and would have need the ball and given them the cover. Going to talk about that, but
I want to talk about that one too when we get to the second strategy. But you give out some plays early, right? And you make some plays on Sunday.
Yeah, it varies from there's a combination of factors. It's for me personally, it's sometimes a matter of motivation. It's a matter of focus, because it's important to have clarity and the proper frame of mind, and have the time to kind of figure out what's going to go on with what. So, but at the same, so I would optimally like to bet early. I mean, you're going to get the most value early, but it doesn't, I mean, the closing line value hasn't been making people big money. And, it's not meaning much at all. It's a fallacy. Sometimes you need the closing line, need to get the best of the number. I mean, you always have to try to get the best of the number, but sometimes the market did not move the right way. So that's it in a nutshell there. But there's absolutely times when I'm waiting to the last minute to bet, and you need a line to percolate. You're against the market. You're against the tidal wave, so to speak, on a team. Perfect example of smart, for the people that lecture, oh, don't bet on game day. Well, that's where you got your 7 on Washington last week. So when else are you going to get the 7? So there are no absolute rules. Everything morphs. It's the same with teasers, either tease early or tease on game day. There's no hard fastened rule on any of it. Just go with the flow.
Yeah. So my process going further on this discussion is sometimes I'm not ready to bet on Monday and Tuesday on a game. It could be injuries because you're waiting for concussion data, like you said, or more important, usually concussions take a week, but we'll get to that. But hamstring injuries, other injuries, and so on that we're monitoring. So you can't bet it early. A lot of my analysis is done early enough, and my lines are set early enough. And I've handicapped every game in August anyway, so I have data to go on. But the absolute matchup analysis, the sack information, the pass rush, this quarterback against this defense, sometimes you have to wait. Indianapolis, for example, you had to wait till game day to find out what quarterback was playing. Was it Richardson or was it Flacco? The indications were Richardson, and I made a completely different handicap for both quarterbacks. So there's certainly reasons to wait. And I'd add one more. If I'm looking for a certain number, I'm not going to jump the gun. If the number is like 4.5 or 5, why do I need to bet that game early if I'm waiting for a 5.5 or I'm waiting for a 6? If a power rating takes place at a certain number, I'm going to wait to see if it gets there. And if it goes the other way, fine, I don't play it. I'm going to be picky because I have no need to press a bet, that I'm going to regret later on. So there are reasons to wait to bet late. And one of the reasons popped up in London, a game that I wasn't really thinking of, but when Chicago became a 1.5 point dog,
Yeah.
I immediately scoured the internet and said, who's not playing? Who's not playing in this game? Because my numbers did not at all support a Jacksonville team that struggled to get its first win the week before, all of a sudden becoming a 1.5 point favorite. And thank goodness that went that way, because I took Chicago as a dog, and I'm saying, wait a second, I have the better team and I'm getting points. And that didn't materialize until I think Saturday afternoon, evening, and late Saturday night.
Yeah, I think it was actually Sunday morning, more or less, like very late Saturday night. And I did the same thing, although I didn't play Chicago straight on anything, but because it was a standalone game, I used it in a bunch of other things. So that was a good way to start off the morning.
Yeah, that was just, I don't know why that happened, but I appreciate that. So that's a reason to play late. There's just value at that particular point. So there are a lot of people who tell me or tell others, oh, you can't win if you bet on game day. Well, you can if you already have a game plan in mind. You don't want to lose a number, but you have to have a game plan in mind as far as what you're looking for, game by game by game.
Well, we've said it before. There's a lot of misinformation where people just repeat themselves or want to try to come up with something that sounds. There's no hard fast and rules on it.
So I want to bring up one other thing, and that's betting early and betting late. And it's a game I think you were going to get to anyway, but and a game I lost. And so we both lost. We have the Giants plus 3.5 at the beginning of the week. And the reason I bet that at the beginning of the week, because I was pretty sure that Neighbors was going to be cleared. And if Neighbors is cleared, do you think there's going to be 3.5 later in the week? Not even close, according to my numbers. According to my numbers, that game would be 1.5 or 1. And so, yeah, 3 would still be value, but 3.5 would be so long gone. It's not, if you base it on what Cincinnati had shown defensively at that particular time, there's no reason to look back and say we shouldn't have had 3.5. But when Neighbors wasn't cleared, I wasn't comfortable. So I did not get off the bet. I got off half the bet, but there was a reason to bet late, which the game, surprisingly to me, kind of stayed at 3.5 at that point. But because I think it was overpriced to begin with. That's why it stayed at 3.5. But I got off half the play, and there's a reason I did that, is because Daniel Jones is not a quarterback I want to not have his best weapon available.
How did you get off the game?
I just ate the juice, which wasn't that, and just went from a 2-star to a 1-star. I just wasn't comfortable having 3.5 with less than ideal conditions. But I still like the hook, to be honest, Chris, and we still could have won.
No, well, we should have won that game. I mean, it's just another bad coaching move. And that was one of two games. Well, let me talk about this. I got off that game by taking Cincinnati on the money line with Buffalo on the money line. So it paid plus 175. And I already had a teaser leg open with the Jets. So it basically was shooting for a middle, and that landed. But two of these games, Denver and the Giants, team driving, they try to kick field goals instead of going for touchdowns. They don't even try for the touchdowns. Neither one of these teams did.
Peyton's disappointing me. Remember we talked about him in weeks 1 and 2 where he kicked deep and there was no time left on the clock and they got the ball back with it. I mean, Peyton is disappointing me as an in-game, late-game strategist, and he's paid a lot of money and he had a big reputation. I would differ a little bit. The Chargers let the door open because they took the foot off the gas, but the Chargers, that was a hard game to handicap for me because I really wanted to play the Chargers, but I thought giving 3 was too much according to my numbers. But it was a hard game to handicap because the Chargers got so many players back from injury and had the new coach early bye that I think I was too soft on the Chargers money line. I think the Chargers were the right side, but they did let Denver back into the game late.
Yeah, agreed. It's the teaser saved me with Denver.
So both of us found a way to be scared about the New York Giants when it became game time.
Well, I wasn't jumping up and down about it when I played it either.
Yeah. I liked it when I played it, but I was pretty sure that Neighbors was playing.
Well, yeah, but I was hoping that he was going to be in the previous week, I think, or either rooting against him.
Yeah.
What else was interesting? The Saints are really
with
blowing
Green
on
Bay.
a tire.
Yeah.
They are the number 1 declining team over the last 5 weeks or 4 weeks.
Yeah, I think where Dennis Allen is near the end of his coaching tenure.
Well, everybody's getting injured also, and it's a real S show down there, and they got to play on Thursday night again right off the bat.
I would guess Olave's not playing. I don't know why this is talking about betting early. I thought we closed the subject, but I took Denver as a dog as one of 2 plays I made early because I don't think Denver should be a dog to New Orleans. That's, let's put it that way. Peyton's coming back. This is New Orleans' 3rd game in 10 days. There's a few factors going against the Saints in this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and their top 2 receivers are going to be out. Kamara's banged up. Hill will probably, be out again. It's but you got a short week home underdog. It seems very teaser friendly, but even a teaser, you can't see either one of these teams really getting much done for some reason.
Well, when Denver was plus 1.5, I thought that was the wrong line, and I'm on Denver. In a sense, if they were at full strength, I would make Denver 1. So that's why New Orleans minus New Orleans minus 1.5 to start it off was wrong because at full strength, I had Denver 1 in my power ratings. And now New Orleans isn't at full strength.
What do you think about that total 37? It seems
I set it higher, but I understand with Olave off and Denver, if Denver gets the lead, they're going to sit on it. Peyton, for all that people talk about Peyton and what he does offensively, he actually prefers running the ball as opposed to passing the ball. So even though I set it higher, I respect the line. Let's put it that way. Nick's Radler, can you play both quarterbacks to throw picks? It's quite possible.
Yeah, I agree. I mean that when Hill's not in, that causes issues for them. But they're still okay without Hill. But they've got to have their starting quarterback.
Their game planning changes, and I pointed that out a couple weeks ago when that game that they lost, Hill went out. They were winning that game 10 or 14 nothing, and everything changed. I doubt Hill will be back this week. I don't have the injury reports, but I fully suspect he'll be back with the mini bye after that. The question is, will Dennis Allen be there? What's the Saints' record? Are they falling too far behind Tampa and New Orleans and Tampa and Atlanta? And the answer is yes, they're falling too far behind.
Was your number without Sertan?
My number was with him. So if he's not playing, then
He's out.
that's another good point, because you have to rush to make these plays. Is he out?
Yeah, he's out.
He's out. Okay. I would. Well, luckily it's not Derek Carr in the lineup, and yet still have a rookie. But I would make the game then closer to pick him at full strength. But Olave out. I still like Denver's situation. I still like my play, but Surtain out. Maybe that's why the line was where it was to start. Hi, Russell.
I thought it was interesting that Indianapolis actually went there and won in Tennessee. And if the playoffs started today, the Indianapolis Colts would be a playoff team. Can you believe that?
One and done, probably, if they were in. But I had handicapped the game. I actually went Tennessee. I don't know if they closed at 2.5, I think, but they were 3. And then when Flacco was announced, they went to 2.5. So if Richardson was there starting and Tennessee was 3, I was prepared to take Indianapolis because I had handicapped the game with Richardson. I actually thought Richardson would add value against Tennessee if he played. And with Flacco, it's not that I disliked Indianapolis. I just made it a no play because I respected what Tennessee could do. Flacco was more going to be interception prone, in my opinion. But what Indianapolis did is rely on Will Levis to be not a legitimate starting quarterback. And then they ran the ball, and Flacco didn't have – it took a while for Flacco to get the number of attempts that I wanted him to get, because I did bet the over in Flacco number of attempts when he was announced as the starter. But I laid off the game. I liked Indy, but I laid off the game personally.
Well, I knew I was going to be on him, and I preferred Flacco in the lineup just because of the variance with Richardson.
Yeah, well, good move by you, and I played it safe on my part.
Flacco didn't have the greatest of games. He seemed to have his issues, didn't he?
Yeah, well, the Tennessee defense plays more press. So I think that, we saw last year when Flacco was comeback player of the year, this, that, and whatever, he threw a lot of interceptions. There was an opportunity, I thought, the way Tennessee played defense, that Flacco could cost them points. But it didn't happen because Indianapolis' offensive game plan, I thought, was pretty sound.
I find it fascinating. Well, I did kind of say that the point spread wouldn't matter with the Baltimore Washington game, and if you got the late number, it didn't. So I think it was pretty impressive that Washington hung and didn't get annihilated. I think that's if you're a Washington fan, you have to be satisfied with that performance based on their experience and their run and the quality of team Baltimore is. And Baltimore played well, I thought, when I checked in on them.
I liked the game. I thought it was a great game to watch and interpret. No matter what happens the rest of the year for Washington, boy, you have to be excited if you're a fan of that team. Compared to how you felt a year ago to how you feel now, they just need better NFL players defensively. But boy, they're going to fight every game. They're going to have a better attitude. They're going to have a better culture than 10, 15 of the teams that are in the NFL right now. And they're leading the division still. So, let's not just say the season is going to go south. Let's just say that Washington has to be contended with. I thought it was a very good game on both ends. I agree with you about both teams.
Obviously, Washington's defense, didn't fare as well as they would have liked, but the Derrick Henry's just tough to stop.
He's the closer now with Baltimore. Maybe that changes the dynamic, that games they would have lost. They may still give up leads because of their defense, but games they would have outright lost, like they've been losing the last 2 years, maybe Henry prevents that.
So the Chargers would be in the playoffs, and the Broncos would be the first one in. They're the first ones out of the playoffs. I expected better from Denver.
I didn't.
They were lucky to cover a teaser. Fortunately, that they did, but they were DOA.
All right, here's the part of the show that you carry for about 2 minutes. I've got to get my power battery. Be right back.
Live. Anyway, what else do we have here? I think everybody knows that the top 4-point differentials in the NFL are all in the same division. The Vikings, the Lions, Green Bay, and Chicago are 1, 2, 3, and 4. And 3 of them would be in the playoffs right now if the playoffs started. Green Bay's the first one out on some technicality. I guess against Green Bay or against Tampa Bay. You saw that the all 4 teams had the best point differential, and
yes, it was pointed out by you, and one other person pointed out as well. And looking at the power ratings, these power ratings are getting up there. Detroit has entered my top 3 in power ratings, but I have 5 questions coming up, so let's save some of that Detroit discussion for later. Green Bay has entered the top 7 or so for power ratings. Chicago, I don't know where you have Chicago. I have them down compared to the other teams right now. 4th out of those 4.
Where did you have Minnesota? 2?
Minnesota, I have tied with Green Bay.
7?
In the 7 to 10 range, I think. And Detroit 3rd, and Chicago still kind of in the 12 to 15 range, 13 to 16 range. Maybe it's because of the level of competition they played. You don't get fantastic upgrades. I gave them an upgrade because of the way they won against Jacksonville, but mechanically, I have a hard time raising Chicago too high because of the level they faced.
Who they played? They played Jacksonville. They played Carolina, didn't they?
Yeah, they played Carolina. So you don't get a lot of points for beating Carolina. Indianapolis, the Rams, when they were the Rams was a situationally great spot, and then they played Tennessee opening day. It just hasn't been an impressive. They've improved a little bit. Certainly, they've improved their power rating from where I started them at the beginning of the year. But they're not in the top 10. So if people think they're a top 10 team, I would disagree. They're off a bye this week, so they can reset and watch the rest of the division.
Yeah, that's agreed. They're not a top 10 team, but we both have the under for the Bears.
That's true, and a couple of teams who let games get away. Chicago won them. I'm not feeling great about the under, but then in divisional play, let's see what happens when they have to play each other.
Trying to think. Who do you have? I'm sorry. Who do you have number 1 and 2 then?
I believe Kansas. Well, first of all, San Francisco is not rated by me exactly right now because they're not fully healthy. I need to reset their power rating, but I have Kansas City and Baltimore tied for first.
How do you
Yeah.
get? Well, how do you? Where does Kansas City get its strength in your model?
Well, the thing about Kansas City is I haven't changed their number not once over the 5 weeks. I mean, they've just played. They don't win by margin. Sometimes they win because of a 4th and 16, whatever the case may be. Defensively, pretty solid. They're not sacking opposing quarterbacks. They're doing a much better job defending the run. Their Achilles heel. They're top 10 in defending the pass. They're good in strategic situations, down and distance situations. Their point defense is good. A lot of where they get their strength is actually defensively.
I don't have them in the top 9 in either offense or defense.
I would guess that I have them around 5th defensively.
There is
holding them back is their pass rush.
I only have one team that is in the top 6 offensively and defensively.
One team offensively and defensively in the top 6?
Top 5, actually, yeah.
Minnesota?
No.
I have to look.
And there's only...
Well, it could be Baltimore, actually.
No. And then there's another team. Yeah, I'm not even going to talk about that team, but...
Okay. As far as update
Baltimore
on
defensively is middle of the road. They don't even touch. They're close to the top 10. They're giving up points in droves.
Yeah, their pass defense is holding them back. They're not in the top 10 defensively. I was just throwing out names.
Okay, you're throwing it against the wall to see if what sticks.
Yeah.
City by the Bay wants to know if you have a pace of play update.
Not really, because pace of play to me is more important in college than NFL. I don't know what your thoughts are, Chris, but pace of play in the NFL, you kind of know what's going on in the NFL. I don't know. Am I wrong? There's not that much difference in pace of play in the NFL, is there?
You know what? I think that they let the clock or the situation dictate, and they think that almost every team is capable of it with a half decent coach of increasing or slowing down. Don't you?
Yeah, I think predictably Pittsburgh might be one way and another team might be another way, but it depends on if you have a rookie quarterback and so on. But pace of play in college is completely different. You got the Tennessees of the world who are lining up right away, Boise to some extent, some others. And then you have the old UTEP and some of the other schools that prefer to drag it and shorten the game. Rutgers shorten the game. So lots of differences in the college, but it's not something I look at much I actually don't really look at it in the NFL.
Was Pittsburgh that good or the Raiders that bad?
Yeah, that's an interesting one for me because Pittsburgh was in a negative situation and Vegas was a mess.
Yep.
So, I'm saying don't go to 3.5, don't go to 3.5, because if it goes to 3.5, I'm obligated to take Vegas. And I wouldn't have had any regret taking Vegas at plus 3.5. But the body language on that team just wasn't where it needed to be. I mean, I really thought the game would be a toss-up. If somebody really pinned me down, I would have thought Vegas would have been competitive, but I'm not sure what I would have completely based it on.
There's a correct answer.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. When we're done with this, I'm going to ask you and the listeners and viewers the 5 questions I have.
Okay.
Detroit 47, Dallas 9.
Score again.
How did that happen? Yeah, I heard that. Somebody said that during the game. Oh, Scott Hansen on Red Zone.
Boy, they came out firing on all cylinders and pulled out all stops with the trick plays and just chewed them up and spit them out. What else would you say about it? I mean, the loss of Hutchinson, that's going to be rough because that's the third pass rusher they've lost. They're basically out of pass rushers.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of sacks to begin with because it's something I talked about, as you know, at the beginning of the year. Actually, they're okay on sacks, but teams like to have a Batman and Robin wherever you are, whether it's the running game, whether it's the pass rush. Remember when the Rams won the Super Bowl? They were a 9-18, but they won the Super Bowl because they rented Von Miller for half the year. And that meant that Aaron Darnold couldn't be triple teamed. And then you had Von Miller and Aaron Donald just taking them all the way. Hutchinson needed a running mate. And now there's no Hutchinson and no running mate. But Dallas, I mean, let's talk about Dallas. What's going on with them?
And Jerry Jones today, did you hear his interviews? He was a little
he melted down. Yeah,
he had a little. I mean, he's got he just had his 82nd birthday, and he's catching crap from the local media, and things are not going well. That team's in trouble. I mean, I'd be surprised if they could hit the playoffs at this point. Unless they beat Philadelphia out. I mean, I'm not high on Philadelphia either. It's going to be one of the ugliest wins around. I mean,
yeah, they were in the best situational spot you can ever have, and they won by 4 in a game that they were favored by 9 or 9.5, and that's why that look-ahead line at -3 in August was so good. But even then, you have to be disappointed that Philadelphia could have actually almost lost the game in that kind of situation. So
they got lucky to win that game. I mean, and the coaching there, you're getting into it with the fans again. They're just a horrible side. I've got notes here that he's, it's questionable whether he's lost the locker room. It's basically, is Belichick going to be interested? Would you stick him in that situation?
I would not hire Belichick. Age discrimination on my part, but I think you got to find that diamond in the rough, somebody that you're going to have for 10 years if you can as a head coach, not somebody who's going to be there, try to fix it, and then pass it on like he passed on New England with literally the way he drafts is built to his specifications, not to a next coach specifications. We're seeing New England have roster holes all over the place, and that's Bill Belichick's doing. And if you match him up with a team like Dallas, Jerry Jones has ruined that team from a drafting standpoint as well.
That's not a silly comment. I honestly think Washington has a fine chance of winning that division.
Door is open.
The door is wide open.
Only one other team I want to talk about before I go to the 5 questions, unless you have another team to talk about. And that's, I think teams, this is my personal opinion, I think teams missed the chance to grab Houston while they were grabbable. Those first few weeks when they could have lost any of those games at the beginning of the year, they didn't. I think Houston is starting to find its stride, and 9 out of 30, Josh Allen against them, scoring all those points, even without their starting wide receiver, their number 1 wide receiver, Nico Collins. I think people missed the opportunity to beat Houston. What do you think?
They've been doing it with smoke and mirrors. I think you're absolutely right. They're pretty highly rated on my model.
They have moved up. They moved up into that top 7 kind of range, and they weren't there before that because they weren't putting away. They were letting bad teams beat themselves, and all of a sudden, Houston is dictating.
Well, let's see here. I've got Houston rated 7th offensively and 7th defensively.
Yeah, they've really caught fire defensively.
So Detroit and Houston are the only 2 teams offensively and defensively in the top 7.
Yeah, and you can see. I mean, I can see from my power rating rise what's happened over the last 2-3 weeks, and both of those teams have risen to a different level now. And
They've Houston has gained 4.9 points of value over the last 4 weeks. They have been doing very well, and I don't know. I don't. I think you're right. I think they're maybe they just started off slowly, and they're going to pick up steam, is what you're saying, and you're kind of expecting.
yeah, and I expected them to start out slowly, and I expected them that slow start to include a couple of losses, but it didn't include a couple of losses because of who they played, Indy and Jacksonville. And we know what's going on with those teams. Ready for 5 questions?
Yep.
Okay. Question 1. How much is Davante Adams worth to the Jets?
32-year-old. They're going to dump Williams. I'm surprised he didn't work out. Aaron threw him under the bus yesterday in the post conference.
I threw him under the bus too. That play was if he makes a catch and one cut, it's actually a touchdown, not only field goal range, but he doesn't even make the catch. And then Williams actually he was targeted 3 times. And in all 3 instances, if you look at the tape, I just happened to be watching all 3 passes. It was Williams who made the mistake.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah. I mean, he was a liability.
You think the Chargers want him back?
Nope.
Okay.
Not Jim Harbaugh's kind of player. So we'll see where he lands. But the bottom line is, I think Adams must be worth something to them because I'm surprised that the Jets are favored. According to your number, should the Jets be favored at Pittsburgh?
No.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, it's you had the familiarity between them, and when you really look, they've got a running back, they've got 3 receivers, they've got 4 or 5 receivers technically. It's that offensive line that's going to kill him. I mean, how long can they get away with that offensive line? If he doesn't get rid of that ball in less than 3 seconds, he's done, and he's immobile.
So this is the 4th year in a row we've talked about the Jets' offensive line. And contrary to, I mean, no, it's not easy to fix an offensive line all at once. But if we're talking about it for 4 years, why hasn't it been fixed? You've got a very veteran quarterback back there. So he has such a quick release, and yet he's still getting pressured like crazy. So the offensive line is obviously a liability. Yeah.
I mean, they're playing better. They didn't play a horrible game by any means, and I have them on the uptick, I believe. I don't have them on the uptick.
The Jets could have won the last 2 weeks, but they're not. So whether or not I think they could win this week against Pittsburgh, and no, I don't want to see Russell Wilson out of the blue create controversy there, is irrelevant. The power numbers just do not support the fact that the Jets all of a sudden should be favored in that game. Second question. Lions, how much is the loss of Hutchinson worth?
Well, the issue is as I mentioned, there's 3 pass rushers out now, so it depends on who they pick up. The Lions say, originally it was going to be Garrett or Crosby, who the fans were suggesting and the Detroit press was suggesting. But the Lions have come out and said they're not going to trade for somebody. They know they know they have to deal with the problem, but they're supposedly going to go to the practice squads route first and see what's hanging out there.
What about Hassan Reddick?
I'm not sure if he was the one mentioned. Who's the guy in Baltimore?
The Jets have Hassan Reddick, and he's the contract squabble.
I don't think he fits the profile of somebody the Lions would want.
Yeah, it's hard to make a defensive player worth a point, but because Hutchinson makes other people better, just like TJ Watt does, just like Aaron Donald used to do, it is probably worth a point. The
Yeah, well,
problem,
you ding what TJ Watt, you ding more than a point, don't you?
oh yeah, I mean, I just start going against Pittsburgh when TJ Watt's out of the lineup. But the thing about losing Hutchinson is it makes the defensive backs have to cover longer. And the problem for Detroit defensive backs covering longer is that they're young. They just drafted a couple and they need time to develop. And they have shown that they're not ready in a lot of respects because the deep defense isn't where it needs to be right now. And that's understandable. I mean, the Lions have so much going for them, especially offensively, that they could have those growing pains as long as Hutchinson's in the lineup. So I'm curious whether or not teams are going to exploit the back end of the defense, because I think quarterbacks get an extra second to scan the field now.
That's an eternity in today's league. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's it's probably an average of a point per game, some way somehow.
Yeah.
But I was actually surprised that there wasn't any moping about it. I mean, it just really goes to show you the focus and the intensity of the team, because I was shocked that nobody was glooming and dooming or really despondent. It was business as usual. They didn't fold. I was listening to the radio and they said play Dallas here for in game. They're going to Detroit's going to be distracted, and they just pressed on, and they celebrated the good plays as normal, and there does not seem to be a cloud hanging over the team. So I think it's pretty impressive, frankly.
Yeah, I mean they'll work around it. They have some things they can do. It's they have a lot of superstars on the team, a lot of high level contributors, and they just have to rally with those guys. Another question for you. Well, I'm going to skip that one because we talked about New Orleans. I mentioned earlier. Now I think we know the answer to the first part. Is Philly overrated, or is Cleveland? I posed this question before Amari Cooper was traded, but is Cleveland in a surprise underrated? And it was possible, even though Cleveland didn't score an offensive TD against Philadelphia, they had a punt return, I believe it was. So Cleveland still settled for 3 field goals because they're so adamant that Watson is their best hope. But I thought Cleveland was a little bit undervalued. But now they're in raise the white flag mode, maybe, if Amari Cooper is traded. So what do you make of the whole Cleveland situation? We don't need to talk about Philly. We need to know
they should just dump. What's the point of making an effort at this point? You're buried under that contract. So I'm surprised it took them this long. I think it's absolutely perfect timing. I think they should liquidate Garrett and whoever else they can get and get some draft picks, and you are what you are. I mean, but I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think with any other quarterback, they were underrated. They really did have some potential.
Is it a balancing act? Because Watson's so bad and the body language is so bad that, I want to say that buy low on Cleveland. There are some players on that team that are going to help, but we have to watch whether or not this is going to be a fire sale. They can't get out from under Watson's contract. It's kind of like the Denver Russell Wilson situation. They're going to eat that. They're going to be up against the cap. So your point is well taken. The best thing they can do is have 13 draft choices next year and start to rebuild the roster the way the Rams have tried to do that, the way other teams have tried to do that. There's no other way out for Cleveland except for to restock the roster.
You've got to become you have to develop the young talent that's not making any money. You have to hope for a miracle draft.
Yeah. It's just a situation I'm going to be watching very carefully, because before the Amari Cooper trade, I was prepared to say maybe for the first time I'm going to be looking at Cleveland, and now I've got to reevaluate. One more question for you. And this is a tough one for me. Where is Tampa? Everybody chime in the chat. Cris, where is Tampa in your pecking order? Are they top 10? Are they top 8? Are they top 15? Where do you have them rated?
If the season ended, they'd be in the playoffs ahead of Green Bay. I think the development of their running game is making life a lot easier for Baker.
I agree.
Kind of similar to the Minnesota situation.
I agree with both of those comments.
But they seem to have been fortunate a couple of times. So they're getting away with some stuff. And I'm very happy that they're not showing up in my top 10 yet.
Because I have them tied 12th. And I was wondering, I mean, people out there, what has Baker Mayfield done wrong? Absolutely nothing. Maybe he should be in the MVP conversation because the guy is doing absolutely nothing wrong. He is completely overachieving from where I would have guessed that he would be with the elevated schedule this year. So I give him and Tampa lots of credit, but I still only have them tied for 12th in my power ratings.
I'm 12th. Also.
Yeah, so I just thought that was fascinating that Tampa's doing so well, yet they haven't cracked the top 10.
Well, they've got who do they have this week? They've got
they play on Monday night against Baltimore.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
I think the UK deserves the Patriots-Jaguars game.
Oh boy, that should be a fun one. Do we have to handicap that game or can we skip it?
So there's action on both sides of the Seahawks-Atlanta. Atlanta was bet up to 3 and then bet back down, and now they're bet back up, and it's sitting at I do see one lone 3.5, but it's basically a week 3.
Roger has Green Bay better than Tampa, and so do I. I have Green Bay better than Tampa.
Oh, yeah. It's not even close.
Yeah. Yeah, Seattle, again, Geno Smith is going to have an incredibly clean pocket because Atlanta is not allowed to rush the quarterback. The question is Geno Smith going to wait again until they're behind to utilize that, or is he going to get Seattle off to a fast start? Because the conditions are good for Seattle, but the conditions were good for Seattle last week as well.
It's got the makings of a high-scoring affair, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, because you're going to have a clean pocket, and you got Seattle, whose defense has been exposed. Now they're playing Kirk Cousins, a very experienced, very accurate quarterback. So there should be no problem completing passes in this game.
As far as the number goes, I don't think I'll have a play in the game.
Yeah.
But looking at the two of them, Seattle is plummeting, and Atlanta is ascending over the last 4 or 5 weeks. So
yeah, well, it makes sense. Obviously, Seattle was going to plummet based on their results. They have a lot of work to do to get back to where they need, and they have the mini bye now. So maybe we're going to see some improvement over the 10 days. New coach mini bye.
I'm not sure Amari Cooper is going to help the Bills. Do you think he will?
I think he will, because the Bills, that was an area where I know it's another receiver that Josh Allen has to be comfortable with, but Coleman, the rookie, has not really stepped. He's not a route runner yet. He's been used in situations where he can free himself, get open for big gains. He doesn't have the gaudiest of stats through the first 5-6 weeks of the season. Cooper brings a veteran presence that they lost when they got rid of 2 or 3 of their best or their most experienced receivers. So I actually think this is a good move for Buffalo.
Was that Scott Norwood's kid kicking last night?
I missed that, but I heard a reaction to that, and I had to turn, and I missed the kick or whatever. I guess the wind affected both kickers.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. It's pretty bad. But that game
I have no opinion on the Buffalo game personally. It's not right now. I haven't done the matchup analysis. I like to do the matchup analysis after we talk.
They're betting up the Bengals. 6.5 is the high watermark.
Yeah, well, obviously with the news that Cooper's gone and Watson's still there. I mean, Cincinnati, they didn't look like they were on all cylinders a week after they looked like they were on all cylinders. The Giants could win the game. We talked about that. I'm not certain. By the way, Joe Burrow's never won at Cleveland. For whatever that's worth.
Okay. Well, there's always a first time.
Always a first time. But do you think the line gets to 7 based on what you're seeing?
Yeah. That's a lot of points. I'm surprised that they would take it to 6.5, frankly.
If it gets to 7, I think we will see some pushback.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah, and probably I would be part of the pushback. I think I'd have to play it at 7.
Oh, the Texans Green Bay game is
great game.
That's the game. Oh wait, geez, there's some good games this week, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, that's the first of about 4 really good games that you've mentioned, and it's kind of going to be the game that, well, I don't think I see an edge at first glance, but I think it's a good game to watch.
Is that where you set the line?
Biggest question for you on that game, and this is a weird comment I'm going to make. Anybody can comment on it, but I think Green Bay has a tremendous turnover ratio right now. I believe it's +9. I think this is a turnover regression situation for them.
I had that. Their number 1 turnover differential. I have that in my notes. They're due.
If you think there's turnover regression, and this is what I think, then I think you could possibly find value with Houston. That's just a off-the-wall comment I have. Can Green Bay continue to thrive on turnovers? It's basically 1.5 turnovers per game.
Yeah, but it's not only that; it's the big plays. I mean, do the big plays keep on coming?
Yeah, I mean, the way Houston's starting to frustrate opposing quarterbacks, it makes this pretty interesting. That if this is a level turnover game, does Houston have value? And that's what I'm going to be evaluating.
Let's see here. Yeah. I have a feeling this line's going to sit right there most of the week.
I don't see 3. 3 would be hard, huh?
It's
a soft 3. I see a soft 3 out there.
Oh, I can bet flat 3.
Yeah. Looking at some of the other matchup numbers here, I could find pluses and minuses both ways.
I think that these teams are fairly equal.
Yeah, I have them dead even on power numbers.
Yeah. Miami and the Colts.
Not going to offer any opinion on this game right now. Miami there's too much variability in what Miami brings on my plate after the bye.
I'm so happy that I don't have to play that game.
Yeah. Save that one for after the game. Okay, game number 2. Big game number 2, Detroit and Minnie.
I don't think that they'll miss Hutch as much in this game against with Darnold back there.
Why?
I just think that they can. I just think that they don't have to apply pressure on Darnold.
It helps, but I mean, you could be right because Darnold could look in bad situations. But the wide receivers they have, who covers Jefferson for Detroit?
Good question.
I don't have an early opinion on this game because Minnie's been off of, so they have 2 weeks to game plan for the Lions. How does that come into account with Flores going against the most balanced team in the NFL is Detroit? Two very different running backs, a good, capable number one receiver, a tight end that they underutilized last week, but he did catch a 52-yard throw. Are they going to blitz Goff up the middle? What are they going to do? If you're Minnesota and Flores, how are you game planning for Detroit's offense?
Well, that's what I have in my notes is that this is going to be a very interesting test facing Flores. What is Flores going to do to slow them down? It's going to be interesting. It's your first look at this game. They're off the bye. Detroit, got off the horse and got their revenge off of Dallas in a huge game. And traditionally, that's a letdown spot. So there's a lot of arrows pointing Minnesota's direction.
Yeah, it may be a sit on the sideline game for me, but I think what Flores does is going to be fascinating to me.
Well, I think he needs to. It all boils down to pressure on Goff. I mean, what else are you going to do, right?
If you don't pressure Goff, there's too many weapons.
I mean, those guys are running circles around defenses. They've got the trickiest routes, and it's hilarious that maybe that Johnson did it intentionally, pulling out all these tricks against Dallas to kind of muck up the perspective from Flores. The following week, what the hell are these guys going to throw us?
Yeah. I'd like to see Laporta be more part of the offense, use that tight end matchup. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah, is Hawkinson coming back?
They opened his window, right?
So yeah, I haven't heard. The last I had heard, he might have been able to. He was possibly coming back this week, and he would cause some problems.
Yeah, I think I could watch the game, probably not play the game.
I think what do you think happens to the line from here?
Well, a lot of people are reacting to the Hutchinson news right away, but I don't have a feel that the line's going up.
I don't think it's going up either. I mean, it's certainly. I think they would get buried with Lions plus 3, so I don't think it can ever touch 3.
No. I think we've seen the rent. I think there's going to be smart opinions on both sides.
Oh, they still have equal health ratings somehow. Well, that's not very informative. My gosh, thank goodness all these other games are on against Philadelphia and the Giants. That's one game I have no interest in.
Yeah. Do you make anything of Barkley going back? Is that worth anything? Is that worth nothing? Barkley didn't have the perfect relationship with the Giants. He'd love to stick it to them, but it's hard to trust Philly.
Yeah, he's going to be incentivized. I'll tell you that.
He'll be incentivized. I assume, again, probably a bad word to use, that neighbors will be cleared.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, last 7 games, the Giants have hosted Philadelphia. They've been an underdog all 7 times, and the results have been completely inconclusive. The best way to go is if you think you like the Giants, you almost have to go money line Giants. You get more bang for your buck that way.
How big of a deal is it when a team plays a second team in a row off of a bye?
Well, it doesn't really affect that particular team. It's just an unfair scheduling advantage in general. San Francisco will deal with that all season long.
The Lions did put up 30 in both their games last year, but Flores is doing something different this year that's been more effective.
I've been told it takes 2 years to learn his system, and we've seen the numbers change because I thought the numbers would not improve as much as they have in a small 5-game sample size. Good point. The Lions can score 30 off anyone when their offense is clicking. So that wouldn't surprise me, but I do think Flores is adding value this year for many.
Yeah, where I'm seeing the slippage on Minnesota is offensively.
So the example Russell puts out, Colts played Titans off their bye and now Dolphins off their bye. It's really not a Colts issue. It's an issue is what do the teams that have the bye, what do they bring to the table? That's my opinion. And for Miami, I have no idea what they bring to the table. Hopefully more reps with whoever is going to start at quarterback. Hopefully their running back, who was so good last year and mediocre this year, they'll get their offensive line in gear. There's a lot of moving parts injury-wise for Miami. It's more of a perk for Miami because their season's on the line right now.
Raiders, Rams. The Rams are getting pounded like the stepchild. Solid 7.
Yeah, so we're seeing that the same kind of thing why people are going against Cleveland. It seems like that's why they're going against Vegas. You just put the white flag out. The Rams have playoff hopes. Vegas probably doesn't. Vegas probably has buyer's remorse in a number of different areas. But, the Rams haven't proven a lot on the field. Number seems a tad high.
Yeah, I think so.
So we have to balance the motivational between the head stuff with what the cold hard numbers tell us.
Well, and in those cold hard numbers, losing Adams is a nothing burger because he hasn't been playing.
Yeah. So theoretically, the team has already moved past them. It's the media and the public that has said, "Oh, they're doing this, they're doing that." But Adams wasn't going to play another down probably for the Raiders.
I think that they should get. Boy, I'd love to have Crosby on the Lions, but Jesus, I like that guy a lot. Whoever.
Yeah. He's the heart and soul of Vegas. If they get rid of him.
What is your? Have you noticed any the divisional matchup? If a game goes over the first game, does it do the opposite the second game?
Historically, yes, but it's usually something that happens in the second half of the year. And this technically isn't the second half of the year. It's only the 7th game of an 18-week NFL season. So it's kind of muddled that way. When you have a team and you play them just 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later or in a short time span, I don't think the results have been as conclusive. I could be wrong about that. Excellent point. Thanks for bringing that one up. Will Aaron Jones play?
Yeah, I'm looking. It says he's healthy.
We pointed it out. Darnold absolutely needs Aaron Jones. Otherwise, he's going to go fall back into bad habits. So that may be one of the absolute keys for that game. And that's why we have good questions in our chat.
Yeah, you know what? I wasn't even. I haven't really looked hard enough at that game, and I can't believe we talked about that game that long and didn't even bring that up.
Yeah,
It's
well,
crucial. It really is.
yeah. I mean, that's why we're brainstorming, and we have help when we brainstorm.
God.
Hard to bet Carolina games.
Is this a
But
flat spot
Carolina's
for
playing well.
Washington?
I don't know if it's a flat spot. I would say no. I would say normally you would say yes, but I would say Washington comes away from that game knowing that they can compete with the big boys. I think it's another attitude notch in their belt.
They don't seem to be right for a letdown, but I can tell you that this situationally is a monster situation for Carolina.
Yeah, I would agree. I have two games where the situations point clearly in one direction. This is one of them. They clearly point in Carolina's direction. The only caveat to that, Cris, is that you have new coaches on both sides of both Carolina and Washington have new coaches. I usually try to suspend team situations the first year of a new coach. So that would be my only flag area.
That's true.
Good game number 3 is next. Kansas City, San Francisco.
And Kansas City hasn't lost yet.
Nope. Super Bowl revenge. Both teams rested. Andy Reid, 13 out of his last 14 straight up after rest.
Yeah, that's a tough, it's a tough situation. It's a tough situation.
Yeah. Very interesting game. A lot more
I think the line is about right, though. I mean, it one either way seems right.
Yeah, I have no problems with where the line is. Basically, you have to decide who's going to win the game. And yeah, Washington will put up points against Carolina. You have to decide who's going to win the game. And I think that's the game we'll get into on Thursday.
We already talked about the Jets Pittsburgh, that the line move doesn't make any sense. I think that there'll be some retraction on that, but it's amazing to get how easy it is to fall for the banana and the Jets tailpipe all the time and become optimistic. I mean, the reality of the situation is they've scored exactly the same amount of points as they did last year at this time. So the offense isn't any better, and their defense was better last year, right?
Yeah, the formula, Buffalo had a formula that I didn't expect out of Buffalo because McDermott doesn't always have the best game plans. They did not throw into the teeth of the Giant pass defense. They rammed the ball right up the middle against the Jets. And the Jets did adjust a little bit after halftime. But that first half, it could have got ugly. I mean, you got a Hail Mary for the Jets just to stay in the game. And I think Buffalo received the second half. I mean, it could have been pretty bad. And the reason being is the Jets showed perhaps some vulnerability to the run, to the power run. And you better believe that Pittsburgh is trained to power run. So the Jets are going to have to make a short week adjustment.
I cannot for the life of me understand why they're sticking this Wilson monkey wrench in with his.
Is that media talk or is that?
No, Tomlin's come out there and said right now they're 4-2. They'd be in the playoffs, number 1 wild card seed. Why do you rock the boat?
Yeah,
I don't understand it. He says he wants to see what they have.
If you lose with Wilson, it just throws the whole time-space continuum off for them. If you lose with Fields, you could turn to Wilson and try to get a spark.
I'm going to be interested to see what happens with that. And I think that it makes that game a little bit harder to bet. That's an example of one of those games I'd like to see percolate a little bit.
Yeah, I
Oh, and the
understand that.
Steelers did lose some offensive linemen, didn't they?
They lost their rookie, Frazier.
That's right.
Probably won't change their game plan, though. And Frazier is more of a road grader run blocker out of West Virginia, especially in his first year. He eventually could do both. He's one of those blue collar guys that was perfect for West Virginia, and blue collar is what Pittsburgh's all about. So very natural fit. His draft rating went up because of the team that he went with, that he signed with.
I mean, basically, Tomlin has only said that he's giving him first team reps. So, if you want to bring the guy up to speed, so to speak, I don't see a problem with that. Fields has been playing. Let these guys work. Get some extra work in.
Yeah, I mean, why not? It's all speculation right now. I cannot believe that Fields would be benched after a 32-13 win, regardless of how it was achieved.
Yeah, I don't think he can pull that off. If he pulls that off and they lose this, they would have to win the game.
Yes, absolutely. That's Sunday night, by the way. It's a standalone Sunday night.
Yeah, jeez.
sorry to bring that up.
It's a good teaser game. Pitt over a touchdown, or over the 11.5 and a 3-teamer. It's just cha-ching.
Yeah, it really doesn't seem like Pittsburgh would lose by that much of a margin if they lost.
This Baltimore Tampa Bay game is going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, so we've got 4 really, really good games: Houston, Green Bay, Detroit, Mini, KC, San Francisco, Baltimore, Tampa. Fascinating game. This is the second game of 2 where the situations favor one side.
Tampa Bay, right?
That is correct. Yep. And obviously Baltimore is a force to deal with. If Baker Mayfield, he's done nothing wrong. It'll be very fascinating to see how he fares against Baltimore.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see where that line holds.
So where are we? It kind of was 3.5. And it is 3.5 that I see mostly, huh?
Yeah, I'm looking up the teaser info.
And the line is roughly, I would make the line 3 personally. Not a big difference, but 3 versus 3.5.
No, you can tease Baltimore if it gets down to 3 profitably.
This game, I could see 3, 3.5, or 4 being the final result as far as the spread. We just have to see what happens there. Any injuries for Tampa that I should know about? I think one of their guys went out offensively. Valdez-Scantling. I was praying there was going to be a prop on him so I could go under like I have all season against him, but they didn't even list him for a prop. Yeah, those numbers, 52 to 56, not good enough.
No, it's Baltimore is the second worst pass defense, but the number 1 rush defense. That's pretty.
Yeah, Baltimore's got back to its old ways. They were always relevant when they clogged the middle. This was a team that historically you couldn't run against. And that pass defense being bad is part of the way they protect, or they do not protect, leads defensively. We've seen teams score on them too many times in the third and fourth quarter. But they're really forcing teams to pass the ball this year. A very good job at defending the run so far.
Well, the Tampa's got some good receivers. How is Baltimore on the sack routine and the pressure?
Okay, so Baltimore, one thing about Tampa is they were league worst. I think 31st or 32nd running the ball last year. Rashad White couldn't get open at all. And I think what's happened is Rashad White isn't even their lead carrier anymore. I'm looking, is it, Irving. I mean, Irving's running 5 yards a carry, 5.5 yards a carry. White didn't even play, I think, last week, and they didn't miss him. They scored 51 points without their presumed lead running back. I think Irvin's taking over. So if Tampa can establish the run, it puts more pressure on Baltimore. Then they can't just unleash their pass rush, which has been certainly above average. 19 sacks in 6 games is very, very good. That's over 3 a game. That would translate to 50 for the year. So
isn't that more than Atlanta had all last year?
It's more than Atlanta has every year, it seems. You're dinging Atlanta, but Atlanta already has 5 sacks.
5? Are they that bad again?
You're talking about Watson gets sacked more than 5 times a game, and Atlanta has 5 for the whole year.
They should have Atlanta play Cleveland.
Yeah, that would be fun. If Atlanta...
It's the immovable forces.
Yeah. That would be a fun one. Yeah. Handicapping Baltimore Tampa is going to be fun. I haven't fully handicapped that. We know the situations, but there's a lot more to this game, and that crowd's going to be rocking on Monday night.
I hate them playing these games 45 minutes apart. It just really sucks.
Yeah, that last one's fascinating. I have to admit, I haven't done any work yet on the second one, the Chargers, Arizona. So I'm going to rely on what your preliminary thoughts are.
That's a good question. I've got pretty much a similar reaction. This Arizona is such a disappointment, but they're the number 1 declining team over the last month. They've lost 9.6 points in value.
So they scored 14, I think it was, against Washington and 13 against Green Bay. And something's going on with their offense because I didn't see that coming. I thought they'd still give up points defensively, but you're right about being declining because something happened to their offense the last 2 weeks, or 2 of the last 3 weeks anyway.
I mean, this Charger team is doing it with smoke and mirrors.
I think you have to get used to a different Charger type defense where they just play fundamental football and they're not going to unleash everything about Herbert. Although if there's ever a game that you want Herbert to pass more, it's going to be against Arizona.
Oh, I know. Are the Chargers a top 3 defense? I don't think so.
Are the Chargers a top 3 defense? No, they're not, because they're not defending the pass to the level that they need to be at. I don't have them in my top 10 right now, but they're still fundamentally so sound. You have them at 4?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have them at 4 because of pass defense. I have them league average in terms of rushing the passer, a little bit better than league average in terms of stopping the run, certainly below average in stopping the pass. Fundamental tackling, they're probably top 5. So,
what happened with Harbaugh leaving the field? He
had irregular heartbeat, some abnormalities that he's dealt with for years and years and years, and it just cropped up. He's taken medication. He has to be aware of it. It's not life-threatening, but his heart races really fast when that happens.
I'm not in the swing of it for this week yet. I got to tell you, there was a time where as a regular bettor, I would have probably said, I'm going to take all the home underdogs. There's no way they go under 500. You got to they've got to go 5-3. Worst case scenario. I mean, if this was 30 years ago, I could just see myself doing that. Could you imagine going 0 for 8? What the hell has happened on this league? That just goes to show you you don't have to throw much weight into where the game's being played. Very few times.
Yeah, we talked about home field advantage being roughly 1.5 points and stuff like that. But the other thing this is, and we talked about this early in the year, with all the upsets and all the survivor picks dying and dogs of 5.5 points covering and winning and stuff like that, at some point there was going to be a correction. And week 6 was a correction. The dogs didn't do very well week 6, especially those home dogs, like you said. So the NFL corrects itself. The odds makers, the books, they self-correct during the year. What happens in week 3 doesn't always happen in week 7 or week 10.
That's a good point. But Arizona doesn't seem to be able to put up any points lately. What the hell's gone wrong with them?
Yeah, this is something that I told you I hadn't studied it yet, but I have to study it further. What is going on with their offense? Harrison, presumably the rookie sensation, hasn't really lived up to expectation to start out. He's in concussion protocol or hamstring. Something's going on where he gets the extra day and a half, but we have to watch to see whether he even suits up this week. And so the wide receiver unit hasn't been as good as advertised. Protecting Murray, it's not been bad. At first glance, I can't think of why they're not scoring more points.
Oh, let's see here.
Yeah. I read a report that said the estimate before game was that 56% of the crowd in Vegas would be Steeler fans. But I get the feeling the louder fans were more than that.
I don't have any definitive news on Harrison, but I know he had that good first game.
Yeah. Comet's right. We had the book on Kyler Murray at the beginning of the year, beginning of his career, that he doesn't study much. It's more schoolyard, street yard, and if the game's close in the fourth quarter, Kyler Murray can pull it out. But there were some crazy fumbles where, I don't know, the attention to detail wasn't there for the offense.
Well, that's about all I have at the moment. I'm going to try to catch a groove. I've got no groove into this week yet.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating week, both from games worth watching and games worth analyzing. I like the fact that I had such a light card on Sunday that I was able to take a step back, and looking forward to this week and looking forward to dissecting more on Thursday with you.
Theodore did not attend the game last week, so he's got no in-person interviews, does he?
No, we'll probably, if you have any particular game, I was going to say, let's get some Jerry Jones audio, but I'm tired of Jerry Jones. So let's not get
I don't think anybody gives a shit about Jerry Jones. So
no, we don't want that. But I'd love to get some Baker Mayfield sound if he has any of that.
We had him 2 weeks ago.
Let's get him. I mean, there's some good games here. I mean, maybe he'll get some Lion sound for you on what they're going to do defensively.
You're not betting Middle Tennessee State today, right?
I am not betting any of the games tonight, I believe.
Ugh.
Middle Tennessee State's coach is Derek Mason. That was an important.
Okay.
Oh, Middle. Yeah. I don't handicap Kennesaw. You got to draw the line at 133 teams. So that's where I drew the line. I don't handicap Kennesaw. Derek Mason is possibly the worst coach in college football. And I had to remind myself that a couple of times this year when I was considering them. It's much easier to bet against them. And I'm enjoying the fact that they have 5 losses on the year.
I don't know. New Mexico State looks pretty solid to me.
They have line value. There's no question about that. I will say this, just for the record, Louisiana Tech has been historically a bad pass defense, actually a bad defense overall. They made a smart hire. They hired Northern Iowa's defensive coordinator, I believe. And Northern Iowa has played defense. You just look at their games against Iowa State over the years. Northern Iowa can play defense. All of a sudden, Louisiana Tech is playing defense. There's still line value for New Mexico State, but I really like the fact that Louisiana Tech actually made an actual good defensive hire for once.
It was explained on one of the morning shows that these primetime games are being used as messages to the other games. They're calling the games tighter to send messages that to the other teams playing later on in the week that, hey, we're going to be calling this, so to speak.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's true or not, but last night was just preposterous with all the flags. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I could go both ways on that. The pass interference calls were horrible. The roughing the passer on Aaron Rodgers was not roughing the passer. He actually tried to get off him. Those were just terrible calls. There were going to be 15 penalties without the bad calls in this game because both teams, they were grabbing jerseys. They were going off sides. These teams were not playing fundamentally sound football to begin with. The refs didn't have to make it worse by calling some of these pass interferences.
I guess one thing I didn't get that Buffalo's all that good. I mean, has the balance of power shifted that rapidly to the NFC, or is it just my imagination?
Buffalo's hanging around right now, getting some wins because other teams are. That's the way a lot of these teams are getting wins. Houston early, Buffalo the last couple of weeks. We've seen it from some of the other teams. Some teams are just making too many mistakes. The Tennessees of the world are making mistakes, throwing weird passes, underhand passes, whatever, fumbling at the wrong time. There's critical mistakes that some of the good teams are letting the bad teams make, and then maybe Buffalo will find its rhythm. But Buffalo's a little bit of an incomplete defensive team, in my opinion. Do I have info on the most and least penalized teams? No, I just know certain trends and tendencies, like Kansas City likes to go off sides. Kansas City likes to line up off sides. They're one of those teams that tries to get away with every single inch of real estate before the ball is snapped. So you're going to see a lot more unabated to the quarterback or lining up off sides with a team like Kansas City. Also, grabby teams. You could kind of get trends and tendencies with teams, how they play pass defense, whether or not they get grabby in pass defense. But other than that, I have no information on penalties.
Well, I can tell you, Iowa's number one. They're the least penalized.
Iowa?
Yeah.
Well, you got the same defensive coordinator for 17 years. You have the same head coach for 25 years. Continuity helps.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I wish I would have been searching under NFL, but that's what we get. All right, let's call it
Let's call it a day and come back on Thursday fresh with new information.
All right. We'll see you guys later.
Thanks for bearing with us for an hour and a half.